I used to think silence was strength, a clear, unshakable wall that protected me from the storm of expectations around me. It felt like a shield, letting me survive their judgments without resistance. But over time, that silence stopped feeling like safety and started to feel like suffocation. It crept into my thoughts, coiled around my ambition, and left me questioning if I'd ever be more than the disappointment they believed I was. My family never really saw me, not as I was, and definitely not as I was becoming. They had this blueprint for success: law degrees, suits tailored to perfection, promotions at global firms, family names etched in gold on office doors. And when I chose to walk away from all that, they didn't just disapprove, they pitied me. 3 nights ago, I sat at the same table where they'd held every birthday, every celebration, every carefully controlled conversation. The dining room still smelled like lavender and power. My father, Richard, stood at the head of the table, his voice always more verdict than dialogue. My mother, Claire, sat beside him, pearls glinting under the chandelier like a badge of loyalty to tradition. My brother Nathan leaned back in a $1,000 suit, basking in his new promotion as the youngest senior partner at Harper & Klein. Across from me sat Uncle Thomas, the family's gatekeeper, his eyes narrowing like I was a stain on their legacy. "Julian," my father said, his voice slicing through the room, "we're worried about you." That word again, worried. Like I was broken. Like I needed fixing. I shifted slightly in the gray sweater I'd worn on purpose, a quiet rebellion against their designer standards. To them, it meant I was struggling, couldn't afford better. But to me, it was armor. "Your brother just closed a $30 million deal," my father continued, motioning proudly to Nathan, who gave me a look somewhere between pity and victory. "And you're tinkering with some fantasy tech company?" My mother, always the diplomat, added, "You were a star at Diot. Director by 28. Why walk away from something real to chase a dream?" Uncle Thomas let out a low chuckle. "Software. You left stability for software. You're wasting your education and what's left of your inheritance." I stayed quiet. They didn't know. They hadn't asked. For 3 years, they believed I was barely staying afloat. They saw my small apartment and old car as signs of failure. They whispered behind my back, sent job listings, offered help, and mailed self-help books on purpose and recovery. They had no idea that the startup they assumed had crashed was now soaring above the very industry Nathan claimed to dominate. My phone sat screen down on the table, silently counting the seconds. At exactly 7:03 p.m., I broke the silence. "Do you want to know what I've actually been working on?" My mother looked up, equal parts hopeful and skeptical. I offered a small smile. "I think Forbes can explain it better than I can." On cue, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and froze. Her hand trembled, wine sloshing near the rim of her glass. Nathan leaned forward. Uncle Thomas squinted. The headline read, "Nova Shield valued at $5 billion, the covert AI defense startup founded by Julian Kane." The room went still. For once, their voices were absent. "$5 billion? Nathan murmured. "There must be a mistake," Thomas snapped. "No mistake," I said quietly. "And after this morning's international defense deal, we're closer to 7. My father sank into his chair, visibly shaken. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you never asked," I replied. "You were too busy assuming I'd failed to consider I might be building something bigger than all of this." I opened my tablet and showed them a live feed of Nova Shield's headquarters, not a garage, not a rented floor, but an entire 40-story skyscraper I now owned. Engineers, security analysts, coders, all working in real time on a system that was about to change the world. Nova Shield isn't just software, I explained. It's an AI-based quantum defense platform that will revolutionize global security. Governments, corporations, banks, they're all going to need us. And I own 60%. My mother's phone kept buzzing, Bloomberg, CNBC, TechCrunch. One by one, headlines told the world what I had built while they were too busy preparing my rescue. "But you still live in that tiny apartment," Nathan said, baffled. "And that car?" "Choices," I said firmly. "I don't need a penthouse or a Tesla to prove I've succeeded. My success isn't defined by logos or possessions, it's about creating something that lasts." "You thought I was lost." "I was just busy building." Uncle Thomas stared in disbelief. "You're backed by Oracle, Titan Ventures, the Pentagon?" I nodded. "That's why we kept it quiet. Security matters. But now, the world knows." My father's voice was barely a whisper. "All this time." I stood, adjusting the sweater they had mistaken for failure. "While you were comparing me to Nathan's salary, I was creating something that will outlast every bonus and title in this room. I didn't need validation. I needed focus." I walked away as the silence behind me deepened, no longer the silence of judgment, but the silence of awakening. Outside, my phone lit up with a message from Lena, my COO, pre-market stock up 35%. CNN ready for the interview. Cars outside. I smiled and stepped into the back seat of the waiting car. The city skyline glowed like a constellation I had mapped myself, one they never believed I could reach. That night, live on national television, I shared the story of Nova Shield. I spoke for every person who has ever been underestimated, written off, or told their dream was too foolish to matter. I didn't speak to boast. I spoke to show that success doesn't always roar in the beginning, it often whispers, quietly, in the background, until it becomes undeniable. If this story sparks something in you, don't ignore it. Whether you're building in silence or just beginning your journey, know this, you don't need permission to dream big. Drop a comment and tell us what you're working on in the shadows. Like if you've ever felt underestimated. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they're not failing, they're becoming. Subscribe for more stories that fuel your fire and challenge the norms. Because one day, your silence will become the loudest thing in the room.